Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Bonsoir et bienvenue. My name is Riley Brockington. I am a trustee with the Ottawa Public Library Board and City Councillor for Riverward. I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening. Kwe, kakina. Hello, everyone. We believe it is important to acknowledge that even as we gather virtually, we are on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin First Nations people. Many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples now live, work, and study in this territory. Nous rendrons hommage à toutes les Premières Nations, les Inuits et les Métis, leurs aînés, leurs ancêtres et leurs importantes contributions passées et présentes. On behalf of the library, I want to thank our partner in this event, the Ottawa International Writers Festival. We are delighted to host tonight's event, a conversation with New York Times bestseller Shari Lapena about her new domestic suspense novel, Not a Happy Family. If you haven't read it yet, you can borrow Not a Happy Family at an Ottawa Public Library branch near you. And you can check out her other great books, such as The Couple Next Door and Someone We Know, and many more. Coming up tomorrow evening, OPL offers you a choice of 2 more great events to keep you interested and expanding your horizons. They are both on the schedule for 7 o'clock. Our next author event will be with author and poet Esi Edguyan. It will be a conversation in French as part of Croisée des mots, a series that highlights Ontarian authors writing in French. Or if the idea of adding something new to your cooking repertoire appeals to you, please join us for our next cooking workshop, Cooking from Different Traditions, Memories of Japan. This is a cooking demo where registrants can cook alongside it. Remember, you can always visit the OPL website to find out about upcoming programs and to access the wide range of content and resources that comes with a library card. Now, it is now my pleasure to introduce Sean Wilson from the Ottawa International Writers Festival to say a few words. Thank you and have a great evening. Merci et bonsoir.
Thank you, Trustee Brockington. Good evening, everyone. I am also broadcasting from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And I want to begin, as always, by thanking you all for supporting authors and booksellers through these difficult times. Our official bookseller is Perfect Books on Elgin Street, but we know wherever you are right now, there's an independent bookseller nearby who would be more than happy to sell you some great books. The festival is supported by generous individuals like you, so I hope you'll consider subscribing to our newsletter and making a donation. We can't do this without you. I also want to thank the Ottawa Public Library, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, the City of Ottawa, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, Carleton University, and CBC for their ongoing support. Our host tonight is Lucy van Oldenbarneveld, journalist, broadcaster, actor, and playwright. We miss seeing her on the CBC Evening News, but we're thrilled that she has joined the festival's board and thrilled to have her hosting tonight and again on Thursday when we welcome Kim Thuy. Please give a warm virtual welcome to our host this evening, Lucy van Oldenbarneveld.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thanks. I really appreciate that. It's great to be here at the Writers Festival in my new capacity as private citizen. So thanks very much for that, Sean. And I am particularly thrilled to be interviewing Shari Lapena tonight about this absolute page turner. Not a Happy Family is a fast-moving, page-turning thriller. It can easily be read in one sitting, pretty much because you have no choice. Once you start, you can't stop. And this is a book that's not only, you know, trying to solve a murder, what happened, but, and we'll talk about this, I think there might also be some dark comment on the state of the family. If it is, we are in for a very dysfunctional future, according to Shari Lapena. So we will get into that, but please welcome Shari Lapena. Hi, Shari.
Hi, thank you, Lucy.
Great.
Yes, there's nothing I like more than a dysfunctional family.
Right. Yeah. So we will get into that because, I mean, you know, whether a family is dysfunctional, is that now the norm? So that dysfunction is really the white picket fence folks. But we will get to that. Why don't we start by talking about the premise of this?
Okay.
These really are not very nice people. So take us through the story, what happens in the book.
Okay. So this is a story about a very wealthy family, the Mertons, and they live in upstate New York. And the patriarch of the family is Fred Merton, and he's a self-made billionaire. He had a robotics company, and he's a self-made man, and he's also a bit of a psychopath. So he's one of those self-made millionaires who's a bit of a psychopath. And he's married to a woman who's not very effective and doesn't protect the children from him. And they have 3 children who are now adults. One is the eldest. Her name is Catherine. She's a dermatologist. A disappointment because she's not a cardiac surgeon. The second is Daniel, and he's been a bit of a failure in the family business, so the father has sold it out from under him. And the youngest is an artist, Jenna, and she's the wild child and has been very disappointing because she embarrasses them with her nudes and so on. So it starts off with a prologue where I'm going to read to you in a minute, where the bodies are lying in the home. So the premise of the story is that on Easter Sunday, they have a family dinner with all the family comes, and it's a very tense, fraught dinner where lots of bad things are said. And later on that night, somebody comes back and slaughters the elder Mertons, Fred and his wife. And then, when the bodies are discovered, the police come in and they have to figure out who did it. And of course, the prime suspects are each of the 3 adult children who all stand to inherit a lot of money, like millions and millions each. And they all have secrets to hide, and they all sort of suspect each other. And the question is, who among them is also a psychopath? And I get into the question of, whether being a psychopath is, nature, whether it's a genetic thing, or whether it's nurture, because they didn't have the healthiest family upbringing either. But anyway, any one or all of these kids might also be a bit of a psychopath and might have done the murders. Or there are a couple of other people out there too who are possible suspects. So it's really, I had a lot of fun writing this one because it really is a very dysfunctional family with a lot of people who are really a bit off and kind of out there. And it's quite interesting to watch what they do and how they treat each other. It's a very interesting sibling relationship. Once the parents are dead, you see the kids all positioning and thinking about each other. So that's sort of the setup. It's really a whodunit with a side of dysfunctional family analysis.
Yeah, and there's so much to get in there, Shari, to dig around in, and how you approach this, and why you wanted to spend time with these awful people. But why don't you read us the prologue, if you wouldn't mind?
Okay.
Just set it up for us.
I mean, they're awful, but they're very entertaining.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, sure, they're awful. And, I don't know if that's the way people are going, but I mean, look around.
Right?
Things aren't great right now. So,
And that is definitely one of the things that we explore. We get to know them and their motivations and understand in greater detail sort of their private thoughts and what motivates them. So I mean, yeah. So let's hear about from the prologue, and then we'll talk through some of the characters.
Okay. Here's the prologue. There are many expensive houses here in Brecon Hill, an enclave on the edge of Aylesford in the Hudson Valley. Situated on the east side of the Hudson River, about 100 miles north of New York City, it's like the Hamptons, but slightly less pretentious. There's old money here, and new. Down the long private drive, past a clump of birches, there it sits, the Merton home on its vast expanse of lawn, presented like a cake on a platter. A glimpse of swimming pool to the left. Behind is a ravine, and thick trees on either side of the property guarantee privacy. This is prime real estate. It's so still and undisturbed. A weak sun is out, interrupted by scudding clouds. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Easter Monday. Elsewhere, children are greedily finishing off their chocolate bunnies and foil-wrapped eggs, gauging what's left and eyeing how much remains in the baskets of their siblings. But there are no children here. The children have grown up and moved away. Not far, mind you. They were all over just yesterday for Easter dinner. The place looks deserted. There are no cars in the driveway. They are shut away behind the doors of the 4-car garage. There's a Porsche 911 convertible. Fred Merton likes to drive that one, but only in the summer when he throws his golf clubs in the back. For winter, he prefers the Lexus. His wife, Sheila, has her white Mercedes with the white leather interior. She likes to put on one of her many colorful Hermes scarves, check her lipstick in the rearview mirror, and go out to meet friends. She won't be doing that anymore. A house this grand, this polished, glossy white marble floor beneath an elaborate tiered chandelier in the entryway, fresh flowers on a side table. You'd think there must be staff for upkeep, but there's only one cleaning lady, Irena, who comes in twice a week. She works hard for the money, but she's been with them so long, more than 30 years, that she's almost like family. It must have looked perfect before all this. A trail of blood leads up the pale carpeted stairs. To the left, in the lovely living room, a large china lamp is lying broken on the Persian rug, its shade askew. A little farther along, beyond the low glass coffee table, is Sheila Merton in her nightclothes, utterly still. She's dead, her eyes open, and there are marks on her neck. There's no blood on her, but the sickening smell of it is everywhere. Something awful has happened here. In the large, bright kitchen at the back of the house, Fred Merton's body lies sprawled on the floor in a dark and viscous pool of blood. Flies buzz quietly around his nose and mouth. He's been viciously stabbed many, many times, his fleshy throat slit. Who would do such a thing? And that's the question, isn't it?
Who would do such a thing?
Mhm.
And so it begins, and then
Mhm.
and then we are off for the rest of this journey. Shari, when you were thinking of this book, who inspired the characters? I mean, where did you find their details? How do you create people like this? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so some people, they build characters, they get a piece of paper and they get a lot of characteristics, what they look like and what they like to do and their hobbies and so on. I never do that. I don't really care that much what my characters look like or how they take their coffee or things like that. So when I start, I don't really know anything about them. So to get to know the characters, what I do is I just put them into a situation of conflict and I see what they do and I see how they act. And they start to act and affect things, and then I get to know them. So that's generally how I start a book. I put a couple of people together who are in conflict about something. And here it was, I start with the dinner. The prologue is you see the bodies, but then I go back in time a little bit and I start with each of the children that are going to the dinner and how they feel about going. And I think about, so how does Dan feel about going for dinner with his dad? And then I get in, he starts to build in front of me. I see that he's underconfident. I see that he's going to have to ask his dad for money. And then I realize that his dad has sold the company, so he doesn't have a job anymore. And the same with the daughter. She's looking forward to going because she likes to go to the mansion and have a fancy dinner, but her husband doesn't like it. And so I just get to know them. I put them in these situations. Then they have a big fight at dinner and I learn more about how each one reacts to the others and so on. So I learn about them by what they do and what they say and how they react to things. So
do you make decisions at all ahead of time? Because one of the great things about this book is you become certain that so-and-so did it and he did it and then she did it. And then you think, oh no, well, he didn't do it, she did it. Do you know early on who did it in your mind, or does that also evolve?
Yeah, I never know who did it in the beginning. At least I haven't so far, and I've done 6 books now, and I still haven't. I never know what's going to happen. So I start with a premise, and I start with a couple of characters, or maybe more characters, and I see how it goes along. And the way I keep it open and interesting for me is I write it in such a way that any one of them could have done it. So I have to leave it open that they could have done it, but I have to come up with ideas that make me think, oh, they probably did do it. But then I come up with ideas that show they probably didn't do it. And so it's a constant balance between, oh, this makes it look like he did do it. This makes it look like she did it. This makes it look like she didn't do it. And it's just this constant juggling that I do. And I just do that all the way through. And so I get to towards the end of the book, and I still don't know who's done it. And I think, and I don't know this because I haven't tried it, but because I'm not good at planning ahead, but I think that if I knew who the killer was, I wouldn't have all these things happening on the way to find out, because I would be too, things would be closed off for me. So when I don't know, all the tangents are there and all the possibilities are there, and I can pursue anything. And I act like they all could have done it, and then when I decide at the end who did it, the others all just become red herrings. So I'm not really sure how I juggle it all in my head, but I do.
And I mean, because it really is at a number of different points, you are certain you know who did it. And then that changes, and then it might come back, and then it might go somewhere else, and then it's, up in the air again. Are you plotting any of this on a wall? It's all in here, and you're writing this out?
It's actually not in here. It's not planned, and it's not written out, and it's not in here, because what I actually do is I plot as I go. So it's, we call it plotting on the page or plotting as I go or whatever. So I don't really know, I might know a chapter, sort of a chapter ahead where I'm going, like I might plan what I'm going to write that day, but I don't know where it's going. I just know that I want us to be enthralled by all of the characters and think that they all might have been up to something. They all might have done it. And yeah, it's not planned.
Right. No, I mean, I understand what you're saying there, but it is quite astounding, the details and the threads that you are weaving throughout and sort of keeping track of. It's not like stitching something together that you bring the thread forward and then you see where it goes with a certain character.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it sounds chaotic, and it is kind of chaotic, but it's also fun. It's fun for me because it's like a discovery for me. So things will pop up that I'm not expecting, and I think, ooh, that's interesting, and that takes me off somewhere else. And then, when I revise, I might take something out, or I might add something in, but I have the main story there and all my suspects and so on.
I should remind folks who are watching that Shari's going to take questions in a bit. So if you have any, please drop them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. So for as many as we have time for, just in the Q&A there. Shari, you referenced the poet Philip Larkin, and this is a quote that I once saw on the cover of Granta magazine: "Families, they F you up."
They do.
And I mean, his poem is a bit different. He talks about mothers and fathers and how, they were influenced by the things that they were influenced by. But what attracted you ultimately to the idea of a dysfunctional family? Why that?
Well, because there's really nothing interesting about a functional family. I mean, fiction is built on conflict. That conflict is what drives it. So I mean, if everyone's all getting along and it's all lovely, then there's not much there to deal with as a writer, especially, well, if you're writing thrillers, certainly. But I also think that, most families are dysfunctional to some degree. So I think maybe it's comforting to read about a family that's more dysfunctional perhaps than yours. But, I'm not a big believer in the white picket fence and everything's just lovely. I tend to think that behind those doors, things aren't so lovely for most people. All families have their problems and their difficulties. So I think maybe reading this book is fun because most families, despite the problems they might have, they're not as bad as the Mertons problems. Like, those people are really off. They're really out there.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there is something cathartic about it, just reading it and say, wow, okay. You look at your own family or friends' families, and you realize that perhaps everyone has a certain level of dysfunction. Absolutely. Do you have a greater message then on families, other than you don't believe in the white picket fence necessarily, but there are some really dark threads in this one, and you were trying to determine if psychopathy is genetic or not. What conclusion did you draw?
Well, I mean, I'm not a scientist or a psychiatrist or anything, but the longer I'm around, the more I think that it's sort of genetic. I think, I've been fascinated by this question ever since I read We Need to Talk About Kevin. That book, the Lionel Shriver book.
Yeah.
That book. And there are lots of others
Yeah.
where you look at, was it the mom? Was it genetics? And you know what? I'm falling hard on the side of genetics these days. I mean, yeah, but I fudged it in the book because they had a weird upbringing, and well, not a weird upbringing, but they were brought up by a cold psychopathic father and an absent, unaffectionate mother. So and then in his background, Fred had a grandfather who murdered someone. So I've read so many interesting books in psychopathy, and one of the books I read was about a doctor who was doing an experiment, and he found out by accident that he in fact was a psychopath. And then he said, everything suddenly made sense, because what you have to realize is that not every psychopath is a killer or a violent or most psychopaths aren't violent at all. They're just selfish, narcissistic. Like, you could argue that there's lots of psychopaths or sociopaths running large companies, running
Countries.
office. There's lots of them who put self-interest way, way above others. And yeah, it's just, it's interesting to look at that. And if you read studies about it, they say a lot of very successful businessmen and some politicians are actually, like, 1% of the population is supposed to be a psychopath. So it's much more prevalent than you might think, but most of them are not violent serial killers. They're not. So that's just one kind of psychopath. So yeah.
That is fascinating.
It does.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of going through the list in my own family right now. I do think that we certainly, I'm speaking for myself, didn't understand the definition of what being a psychopath is, and knowing that it is far more prevalent than we may know. That is very interesting. So yeah, okay, I will keep that in mind. So Shari, when did you know? Because you've been a practicing lawyer and a teacher. When did you know you wanted to be a writer full time? And how did you ease into that? And tell us a bit more about your journey there.
Well, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 9. And I thought, I remember very clearly, being a big Nancy Drew fan and thinking, I just want to write Nancy Drew books. Like, I just want to be a writer. I want to write mysteries. And, as I grew up, I was always a huge bookworm. So I read all the time. And I just thought, being a writer would be like the best life. And, I was right. Anyway, so I wanted to be a writer. And then I went to school and I did political science. And then, of course, you don't think writing mysteries or writing novels is a good way to make a living, right? So I thought, I better go to law school, because what else do you do with a political economy degree? And so I went to law school, and I was a lawyer for a year or two, and I really, really didn't like it. And it didn't suit me at all. So then I thought, I'll be an English teacher. That'll suit me better. And it did suit me better. So I became an English teacher for a while. And, so everything's just sort of a way to come back to being, like, to what I really wanted, which is to read and write. That's really all I want to do. I really don't like having a job. So, and I think a lot of writers will tell you that they really aren't interested in having a job. They just want to write books. So what happened was, when I was working for the Board of Education, and I had my first child, and I decided to stay home. And then by then I was 40, and I thought, or 38 or something, and I thought, I will write during nap times. And so I sat down and I started writing my first novel in my late 30s. During nap times. And then so I wrote a couple of literary novels, and then those were published here. But then when I was about, I don't know, I can't remember now how old I was. I don't want to talk about my age anymore. But anyway, I'm getting old. So I had always wanted to write a thriller, but I thought, that you had to plan them out in advance, because they were very complicated plot-wise. And when I wrote my literary books, which were comedies, I had no plan. And I just sort of went, I just started and went. And I thought, you can do that with literary fiction, because, plot's not so important. But I thought, I don't dare do that with thrillers or mysteries, because plot is so important. So how could you possibly do that? And then I just decided one day I really wanted to write a thriller. And I just didn't want to, I just decided to try it, and I didn't want to tell anybody that I was trying it. So I didn't tell my agent, and I didn't tell my husband, and I didn't tell anybody. And everybody thought I was working on my third literary novel. And in fact, I was writing The Couple Next Door. So I wrote that, and I didn't tell my husband until it was pretty much finished. And then when it was done, I sent it out to a thriller agent, and then she read it, and she called me the day after I sent it and said, "Oh my, we have to meet this morning." And so we met, and she goes, "I'm going to New York next week, and I can sell this." And I'm like, "Sure, I hear this all the time from agents. I'll sell it in New York. We'll make a lot of money." So I didn't take it very seriously. And then, so she went off to New York, and then a couple days later, I was in my kitchen. I've told this story before. I was in my kitchen, and the phone rings. I was making dinner, and I pick up the phone, and she goes, "Hi, it's Helen." I said, "Helen who?" She goes, "It's your agent." And I went, "Oh, really?" Like, I never expected her to call. Like, I just, I thought it was all just, "Yeah, we'll go to New York. It's going to be great." I'm like, no. Anyway, yeah, she sold it really quickly. So, and then it sold all over the world really quickly. And then it was Book of the Year in Britain, and it was just a big, big seller. So it was a big, big surprise to me that I could actually write a plot-driven thriller with a plot that worked. And, thrillers work very differently than literary fiction, I think. It's just things happen really quickly, and they sell all over the world. And I guess that happens with some literary titles as well. But it was certainly a different experience for me, because I came from a small press to Viking in New York. And yeah, it's a completely different ball game now. So now I write thrillers. And apparently I still can't plot. I can't plot. I'm hopeless. And yet everyone goes, "Oh, your plots are amazing." I'm like, "Really?" Because I don't know how to plot. I don't know how I do it. Like, I don't know.
Shari, when you get sort of like a great bombshell, if there is such a thing, on a night like that, what was the rest of your evening like after you got off the phone with your agent? Like your
Well,
mind
that was
completely
early in
blown.
the morning, and then I went for coffee. Oh, like, so when she sold the book?
Yeah, when she sold the book.
Then it was just, well, we were just astonished. Like, I think there was champagne. There's a lot of champagne drunk, and some celebrating. And then, I remember it was before Christmas, and I'd be out shopping for Christmas, and she would call me and go, "Oh, we've had a deal from, Spain, or we've had a deal from France." And I go, "Oh, woo, that's nice." So it was very different. It was very exciting and very different. I've sort of gotten used to it now, but at the time it was mind blowing. It was really mind blowing.
Oh, it's just so exciting even to hear it all these years later. And I know you wanted to scoot away from the age thing, but the fact that you were kind of finding your stride in your 40s, sounds like maybe mid 40s with that.
I cannot remember when my first literary fiction came out. I think it was 2008, and then I had another one out in 2011. And I think my thriller came out in 2016, and then I've been doing one a year ever since. Because the difference with thrillers is you tend to do a book a year, and literary you don't. Right. So it's a much faster pace writing. I have to write a book a year generally.
Yeah, and just going back to the huge success of your first book, your first thriller.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think how do you explain either how you were ready, and what was it about all the things that came together for you that made this book what it was?
That's interesting, because I don't think I could have written that thriller had I not spent the 15 years writing non-thrillers that I did, that long learning curve where you learn to write character and scene and all that stuff. There's so much craft that goes into it. So by the time I must have been 55 when I started that thriller, or 54. So I'd been writing for 15 years maybe, and I'd only published 2 books, and I had a third one that wasn't going anywhere. Like, it was done, but it wasn't selling. And I think I was doing a book, like, it would take me 3-4 years to do. I had 2 little kids, so I wasn't getting a lot done. I think learning, I think if I'd started with thrillers, it would have been different. I don't think it would have taken off overnight. It wasn't an overnight success because I've been writing for so long. So I think that that learning that I did on the comedies really stood me in good stead.
Yeah. Yeah, wasn't that something? Okay. And I mean, a question I was going to ask, but it sounds like probably is not relevant, is what kind of rejections did you get when you were first starting to sell your work, and how did you persevere? But it sounds like you like hit the ground running.
So I didn't have any rejections with thrillers because I basically sent my first one out, got an agent the next day, and then I went everywhere. So I've never had a problem with thrillers. I've been very, very lucky. But certainly in my previous literary world, my agent was sending stuff out all the time, and like the big houses were turning it down. And I finally went to a small press, and then you see my kitty?
Oh yeah.
Poppy, you can see her tail. Here, Poppy. Come here.
Hey, Poppy.
Most writers have cats. Here she is.
Is that right?
Poppy.
Oh, look at.
Oh, Poppy. Oh, isn't she beautiful?
Look at
she's
that
such
beauty.
a good cat. That's enough. Oh, she's falling off the table.
Steal
Oops.
the show there, kitty.
Yeah. Now you're famous in Ottawa. So yeah, I certainly had the rejection early on in my career for sure. Just not so much with thrillers. And like I said, I think you have to put the time in. It just doesn't happen overnight. You have to learn the craft. And yeah, so I've had my fair share of rejection for sure. And, I had the, should I give up kind of thoughts that you do when you think, oh, the kids are getting older, I should get a job. And, because you always feel guilty writing when it doesn't pay. But most writers write whether they're getting paid or not, right? And that's how you get there. Like I wrote for 15 years without getting paid, and that's what writers do. And then you always feel guilty. Oh, I should get a job because I'm not getting paid. And, and then now it's because I can write without guilt, basically. So, because I'm getting paid. So it's nice.
But it took time to get there. Were you disciplined about writing while you were a teacher, and while you were, that year you were practicing law? Or did this really start to take off when you took time away?
I did a bit of dabbling, when I was younger, but I really didn't start in any consistent way until I was home with kids. Yeah. So yeah, I just didn't have the time. I mean, I was a lawyer and I was busy, and I didn't have the time. And I think with writing, you have to be disciplined and what's the word, consistent about it. But you don't have to do an awful lot every day. If you even do a page a day, that's a book in a year. I mean, you just have to apply yourself in a consistent kind of way. You can't just like write hard for 2 weeks and then leave it for a year. It's sort of it is a discipline, and it takes a lot of hard work and discipline to write a book.
Yeah, a lot of people are listening with big open ears on that. A couple of questions that are coming in I want to ask you, Shari, and just a reminder, if you do have any in the Q&A section, send them to us. This one jumped out from Jess and Diana. They've asked the same thing. Have any of your books been optioned as films?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just haven't been made. That's the thing. I mean, it's pretty typical to get your books optioned, but then an awful lot of things have to go right for your film for your option to actually go to production and get made. So I haven't had anything made. I mean, I've had a few options, but I don't get excited about them anymore unless I haven't got anything to the green light stage yet. So I have a couple more in the works right now, but we'll see. I'm a bit jaded on the whole TV series thing because I've had Paramount, took a couple, and then the option kind of expired, and they've, they're not taking it up again. So you think, oh, Paramount took my book, and but it's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, obviously, with like the success with your first thriller, it'll just kind of happen. Shari, this has come from Steve Sullivan. He says, I've enjoyed all of your books. Curious if you see a difference between Canadian American readers and British readers. You seem popular on both sides of the pond.
Yeah, I can't pinpoint what the differences are. I mean, there are some writers who are popular in one country and not another. I'm lucky, I'm popular in North America and in England and Europe. But some writers are popular in North America, and some are popular, not North America, but they're popular in England. And I don't know whether that's marketing or whether it's book tastes. I don't honestly know. I read a lot of British crime, more British crime probably than American crime. So
why is that? Why is that?
I just really like it. It's kind of it's kind of a different sensibility. So it's sort of, it's a different, and I like Nordic crime too. So it's a different sensibility from American crime. To me, tends to be more violent, more guns, more, yeah, more like America.
Yeah, no, good
Not to
point.
alienate anyone too much, but I mean, I read S.A. Cosby's book, Blacktop Wasteland, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant, but dark. Ooh, really dark, like very violent. It's kind of like reading a Quentin Tarantino film, you know, and I find Quentin Tarantino just a little too violent for me. So I like most of my violence to be sort of anticipatory, not too much gore, not too much violence. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why some books do better in some markets than others. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think as a Canadian, I get to straddle both. I'm sort of North American, I'm sort of British because I'm a British background, so I kind of appeal to both. Yeah.
Yep. You know, and some thriller writers, they stick with, you know, the same characters through books, and you've decided, for the most part, and I haven't read all of your books, but decided not to do that. So how does that decision get made?
I wanted to do standalone thrillers as opposed to a series. I guess I just like the idea of starting with a fresh slate each time. I did use the same detective 2 books in a row, I think. But then I feel kind of tied down by that. And I don't want to feel tied down by it. So, and then sometimes I think, oh, series might be easier to do one a year because it leaves some bits set for you, right? But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like to start fresh and have a completely open, you know, tabula rasa to do a new thing. So yeah.
That's why. Okay.
Also, series tend to work well with more police focus. So you'd work with the same police characters and stuff. And I'm a lot more interested in the people affected by the crime who are not the police. So I always have police there, but I'm really a lot more interested in people who are, you know, causing the crime, being affected by the crime, who are afraid of being found out. That's who really, the everyday people, that's who really interests me more than the police. So, you know, if you do it that way, you can't have the same people having terrible things happen to them every time, because that's just not believable, right? So that's why I do standalones.
Okay. This question, Shari, from Anonymous, it says, what is some advice you wish you had gotten before you started publishing your work?
I wish I'd known that success was around the corner. But you can never know that, because, you know, it is a tough slog and you never know if it's ever going to be worth it. But you keep going anyway. But advice I wish I'd known. I would, one bit of advice I would give, if you think you've got a really good book, I would still send it to the publisher's slush pile, because, you know, they really do read them. Even if they say they don't, they do read the slush piles. So if you have a really good book and you can't get an agent, because it's very hard to get an agent. It's very hard to get a good agent. And a non-good agent will waste a lot of time because they won't do anything for you and you're stuck with an agent. So rather than wasting a couple of years with an agent who's not doing much for you, I would say send it to the actual publisher, because I think they do read them.
You're kidding. That might
that's sort of what I've heard.
Yeah. So finish writing the book, not just the pitch for the book.
Yeah.
And
oh, you won't get anywhere on a pitch unless it's nonfiction. You have to have the completed book, and it has to be polished, and it has to be, you know, almost ready to go. Or don't waste your time, because there's so much to compete with out there that I wouldn't bother sending in a pitch or a proposal, or they might like the pitch and just say, well, go away, you know, write the book and come back.
Yeah, talk to us
then. Not going to waste your time on a pitch.
Shari, when you say you have a couple of things in the hopper, do you write a couple of different books, or start a bunch of different books at the same time, or you just do one at a time?
One at a time, because I only have a year usually to do a book.
Yeah.
So I finish one book, and then I take a little breather for a week or whatever, or a weekend, or whatever my time is that year, and then I start the next one, and I just put it out of my mind. Although, having said that, I'm usually promoting the new book in the summer, and I'm already deep into the next book.
Yeah.
So I'm promoting one book, but my head is in with a bunch of other characters, right? So yeah, get a lot of people in your head.
And where are you, picking up your ideas? Do they, do they just imagine? Do you scour the newspapers for interesting looking characters? Do you eavesdrop at coffee shops? How does the little kernel begin to bloom?
That's a tough one. I do I'm very curious, so I do keep my ears open. And I'm always very curious about people, and I always want to hear about other people and what's going on. But ideas are the hard thing for me, to be honest. I mean, for me, the hardest thing is to come up with the kernel of the idea for the new book that is going to grab me enough to keep me going for a year, because it has to have enough potential and enough possibility to keep me like spinning out all kinds of possibilities. And it also has to be something somewhat fresh and original. And that's getting to be very hard to do, because there are so many good crime books out there that it's hard. How many murders and kidnappings and things can you do? So to come up with a really good idea, I find that's the hardest thing. Once I have that kernel of a book, then everything comes to me. But coming up with that book idea is, I think, the hardest thing for me.
Do you think there will come, because as you mentioned, there's so many good crime novels, that will the public's appetite be satiated anytime soon? Television is full of crime stories now. I have heard that podcasting in some levels, they've reached sort of the ceiling, at least for now, on crime, unsolved crimes stories. What is your thought on why we're so attracted to that, and whether or not there will be a ceiling ever?
I don't think there will ever be a ceiling. I mean, people have been reading crime since they wrote novels. I mean, I think that's almost how novels began, really, with the little penny dreadfuls. People are interested in it. I think things come in and out of fashion more or less, but there's always a solid crime readership. I'm not worried about that going away. But there's more and more crime books out there, and to come up with something fresh is harder than it used to be, So yeah, I don't think the appetite for mysteries and thrillers will ever wane. You hear stuff about domestic suspense will be over, and yet it keeps selling and selling and selling. Or, they'll say, I have heard sometimes that spy thrillers kind of wax and wane a little bit, depending on what's going on in the world. And sometimes you think people would be tired of certain genres, but it doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah.
Or it hasn't happened yet. They'll all fall out by next year. I don't know.
When you write one book a year, describe for us your habits, your discipline. How many hours a day are you writing? What time do you start? People are always very interested, including myself, in that
Yeah.
answer.
Well, it's very, how can I put this? I'm very disciplined, but I also have to be very flexible because I have a very strange schedule. So, say I start a book in May, I'm running a first draft through May, June, July, August, September, October, say. But I'm also, before COVID, I would be traveling a lot in those months to promote the books that's out in July. So I'm writing a new book and I'm traveling, and I'm writing a new book and then I'm traveling, and I can't write when I travel because I just can't. So it's very choppy. It's very chopped up. So then by Christmas, usually I have a draft, and then it, my editors read it, and then like the winter I spend revising heavily, and then by March or whatever we're into like copy edits and proofs and stuff, and by May it goes out, and then I start a new one. So just and promotion just seems to go on longer and longer. Since when COVID hit, I used to do promotion when my book came out, and now with COVID and all the virtual stuff, promotion just seems to go on all year round. Just because why not, right? So I'm actually taking a year off this year. I'm not having a book out next summer, so I'm having a wee sabbatical because I did 6 books in 6 years, and we're moving to a farm, and we just have so much going on. I thought, I just need a bit of a break. So yeah.
Wow. So this is it for the next little while. This
Yeah.
this book-
Yeah.
really.
I'll have
Okay.
one out in July. I'm going back to a book a year after I take this year off. So there will
Yes.
be more books every summer, but just
Yeah.
not coming summer.
Okay. Oh,
Mhm.
very, very good to know. Like, people need warning. This question, Shari, from Alexandra: any book or author recommendations for readers who already read every Shari Lapena book and are looking for other similar fantastic reads?
Well, okay. So I recently read a book called That Night by Gillian McAllister in Britain. That was really good. It's about a crime that these three siblings commit, and then they cover it up, and then they all become completely paranoid, and all these untruths start happening, and it just spirals into this. Oh, it's really good. I quite like that one. I always recommend, Lizzie Nugent. She's really good. Julie McMillan has great books. Ruth Ware I love. Lisa Jewell. Trying to think of some of the lesser knowns, the less big names. There's some really good Canadian books out. There's Robin Harding. There's Jennifer Hillier. There's sorry, I keep saying women. Richard
That's
Osman,
okay.
who I'm interviewing tomorrow. I love his books. They're comedies, which it's nice for me to go back to reading comedies, but they're murder mystery comedies. But they're funny and they're great. Yeah, I read so many. I've always been a big Linwood Barclay fan. Yeah, like people always ask me, and then I just go blank. I think, what have I just read? I've just read, I can never remember the titles of anything. Wait a minute, what's on here? See, I'm not in my bedroom. If I were in my bedroom, I'd look at my bedside table. But yeah, I mean, there's so many good thrillers there.
How many books?
Oh,
Is somebody helping you out with the title there?
No. Oh no, my husband says yes. Beverly McLaughlin. I just read her 2 books. They're really good.
Are they really good?
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, they're really
Supreme
good.
Court Justice. Okay.
It's Full Disclosure and Denial, and they're about
Yes.
this. It's the defense lawyer who takes on the impossible case, and there's all this, twists and the danger. Oh, they're great. They're like Scott Turow or Grisham, something like that. I love a good legal thriller. Like, I hated being a lawyer, but I do love a good legal thriller. So they're very good. Yeah, I like those.
What about this? I mean, it's getting a lot of publicity. This latest one that Louise Penny's done with Hillary Clinton.
I want to read that.
Yeah.
I heard about that. Yeah, I haven't read it.
Okay. What do you think of that model? Like working with a
it's like Bill Clinton working with. Didn't he work with James Patterson? Was it James
Patterson? Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, they've done 2 now, and I wanted to read both of them. I still haven't. I've got a stack of books like this that I have to read, and I haven't read that. But you know what? If anyone can pull it off, it's Louise Penny. Like, I think she could probably write a really good book with Hillary Clinton, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very curious to read it. Very curious.
Maybe we can get Louise and Hillary to the Ottawa Writers Festival. Sean, if you're still listening, get on it.
Yeah, and invite me too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, deal. Sean, are you listening?
No, I think that would be great.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. We have this question here from Steve, who asks, have you ever been asked to provide a quote or a comment for a book that you didn't like? And you don't have to tell us if that is, the name of the book, but has that ever happened, and what'd you do?
Yes. Yes, and we all do the same thing, I think, is we just say we don't have the time to read it. We just can't get to it. And the thing is, we all get asked to do so many books that it's very true that we simply can't get to all of them. So you just can't get to all the books. So, if someone says, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to read it, I think, oh, they hated my book. But what else can you do? Because the truth is, I have lots of people send me books that look really interesting, and I just don't have time to read them. I just don't. So then I feel bad. I always feel bad if I don't have time to read someone's book, or I'll read it, when it's way too late to blurb it because, I got to it too late.
Right.
But you know, I won't blurb something I don't like, and I don't think any. I think
Right.
most writers won't blurb something they don't like. But,
How many books?
But unfortunately, there's so many that I do like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shari, how many books would you say you read in a month or in a year? Like, how much are you reading?
That's a really good question. Goes in fits and starts. So I read both of the Beverly McLaughlin ones in the last week. I read the Richard Osman one again this week.
This week? 3 books in a week?
Well, I'm doing lots of interviews and things, so I have a lot of reading on my, I have a lot of reading to do. I'm actually quite a slow reader, partly because I don't get a lot of time to read. I'm too busy and I try to read at night and I get really sleepy. So, you know, the one complaint I have is I don't have enough time to read the books I want to read. I went out today and I was listening earlier, we were talking about going to your independent bookstore. There's a lovely little new bookstore on the Danforth where I live that just opened, you know, recently, and they do vintage books. And I went out and I bought 22 vintage Agatha Christie's today and a Daphne du Maurier, and I thought, I just want to sit and reread all these books, but I can't. Like, I don't know when I'm ever going to get to do it, you know, but I bought them anyway because I just love having them with the old vintage covers. They're great.
Oh,
but, you know,
wow.
when am I going to have time to read them? I don't know when I'll ever have time to read them, because just when I start to catch up, I'll get 4 more in my door, you know, that week or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get
Right.
requests every day to read books.
But it sounds like, despite the fact that you claim you're a slow reader, that you're getting a lot read.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably a book a week, maybe.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I think we will take a couple more questions if folks want to send them in, which we really appreciate. You mentioned Daphne du Maurier there, and I have to say, you know, we all loved Rebecca. I don't know if you had a chance to read The Winters, which was Lisa Gabriel.
I blurbed that one.
Oh, did you?
I love that
I
book.
love that book.
I love that book. Yes, I did.
Yes. She used to,
Yeah.
another CBC connection. She used to work at CBC.
That's
behind the
right.
scenes.
No, that was a great book. And I love Rebecca. I love all of Daphne du Maurier's. That
I
was
know.
a great book. Yeah.
So good. So good. Well,
It's
Shari,
funny, I went into Indigo this weekend and I was just looking at them and I saw there was like 7 books on the thriller table that I had blurbs on, you know?
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's all kinds of them.
See,
Lots
oh,
and
yeah,
lots
look
of them.
And on yours, Linwood Barkley, who we've interviewed in the spring, Jilly McMillan, Ruth Ware, Fiona Barton. You
Those
know,
are all people I read all their books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, does it ever get old picking up the New York Times? I just was curious and seeing your book mentioned, you know, or on the bestseller list, or, you know, racing up the charts.
It never gets old. In fact, this latest book hit number 3 on the New York Times, and that's the highest I've been. So it's a life goal for me to hit number 1. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that's my, you know, whenever I get on the New York Times, I play that that song. Who's the singer? New
Which
York,
one?
New York.
Oh, Alicia Keys? No.
Who is it? Oh, Frank Sinatra.
Oh, that
Frank
New York,
Sinatra,
New York.
the old
Okay.
classic New York, New York. So when I get on the New York Times list, I play that really loud. Or if I'm going to go to New York for a trip, I play that really loud while I pack, and I just love it. No, it never gets tired.
Never gets old. Well, Shari, it has been such a delight, and I loved your book. Highly recommend this, Not a Happy Family. Leave yourself some time because you won't want to put it down. So big thank you to you for this conversation. It's been so appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lucy. I've really enjoyed it. And I hope I see you again.
I hope so
maybe
too.
in Ottawa.
Yes.
With Hillary and Louise.
Sean's working on it right now. I know it. Anyway, thank you, Shari. And thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight and for supporting the Writers Festival over and over again. It's meant a lot. And of course, Ottawa Public Library for facilitating this evening. It's always a thrill. So I will see you all back here on Thursday when I interview Kim Twee. about her very latest book as well. So thank you, and good night, everybody. Good night to
Good
you,
night.
Shari.
Good night from Toronto. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.